What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is Zamisi here with the Digital Addiction channel on Twitch TV, and I am here today with a 3-part video of how to Mage 5.0. Thank you guys for tuning in here. Right now, this part is going to be about the talent system, about how pretty much everything you can use is all in the talent system and everything is situational. So I'm going to get into this real fast here, show you guys what the abilities are, what the new abilities are, and what I would choose, whether it be PvE or PvP. So listen closely, because I'll be telling you what I pick after I'm done explaining the tiers. Right now we have 6 tiers. Each tier is 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, and 90. 90 we can't get, obviously, because we are 85 right now, but when MOP hits and we get 90, we will unlock that 6th tier. So, let's get right into it. Here is the first tier at level 15. We've got 3 abilities we can choose from, and these are pretty much situational movement abilities. We have Presence of Mind. We all know what Presence of Mind is. We've had it for ages. Gives us an instant cast once we pop it every 1.5 minutes, as long as it is under a 10-second cast time. The next one we have is Scorch. Once again, we've had this for quite some time, and now, instead of having to put a talent point into it, we can cast Scorch while moving. All we have to do is pick the talent. The next one is Ice Flows. It's on a 1-minute cooldown, and it allows us to cast 2 spells or channel 2 spells while on the move. Now here's my theory on this. If you are in a no movement fight, okay, Presence of Mind, no matter what spec you are, is going to be the best choice. Or a very, very minimal movement fight. Presence of Mind will be your best choice. You can pretty much, if you're fire, you can cast Presence of Mind, get another Pyro Blast off. If you're Frost, then you can get another Frost Bolt off. And if you're Arcane, you can get another Arcane Blast off. Every 1.5 minutes, it's pretty self-explanatory. Now we've got Ice Flows. I'm going to skip Scorch here for a second. Now, Ice Flows is a pretty good ability. Here's the thing with Ice Flows, though. If it is a medium movement fight, this is the way to go. A prime example would be War Master Blackhorn. Going to the onslaughts, you pop Ice Flows and you can still cast Fireball while you're on your way to the onslaughts when you're stacking with your raid. And that is pretty much Ice Flows altogether. Now, Scorch. Scorch is a heavy movement fight ability. If you have to move a lot, Scorch is where to go. You can continuously cast it while you're moving. It's got a short cast time. With my haste right now, it is a 1.28 second cast time. And it does decent amount of damage. This is, in my opinion, the best way to go for PvP, especially when you're having to kite melee people. This is the way to go. You can kite better, you can kite more, and it does way more damage than Ice Lance as if you were Frost. And the great thing about it is, if you're Frost, it still has a 9% chance of proccing Fingers of Frost, which we all know what that does. Gives you increased damage like your target was frozen. So, this is my current PvP spec right now, so I'm going to be picking Scorch for PvP. Depending on the PvE fight, I would pick something else. We're getting down into our second tier. We've got Temporal Shield, Blazing Speed, and Ice Barrier. Now, I'm going to describe Blazing Speed here for a second because, quite frankly, Blazing Speed is definitely a talent that is overlooked right now just due to it's really not that amazing. Blazing Speed, if you played Fire in 4.3, we had a talent point that we could take that if we took damage, we had a chance of proccing Blazing Speed, which gives us increased run speed, so we can GTFO out of places. Pretty much the same thing, except now it's a 25-second cooldown, instant cast, and we have to take at least 2% of damage taken, 2% of our HP, for it to actually proc. And it gives us 150% movement speed for 1.5 seconds. As you can tell, it's not that great. I honestly am not going to choose this at all, whether it be PvE or PvP. Now we're going to go into Ice Barrier real quick. Ice Barrier is pretty much the exact same that it's always been. It absorbs a set amount of damage and it lasts 1 minute or until it breaks. Now, here's the thing with Ice Barrier. I think it's a great PvP talent. However, I think it lacks in the PvE department. Some people are going to argue with that. That's fine. Here's my explanation on Ice Barrier. Sure, it absorbs the set amount of damage. However, it is on the global cooldown. So you are going to lose a second of DPS when you pop Ice Barrier every time you pop Ice Barrier, just to mitigate whatever damage you're trying to get away from. Next is Temporal Shield. Temporal Shield, this is an amazing ability. It just came out. And here's the explanation of Temporal Shield. Temporal Shield is a total of 10 seconds of an effect, and it's a 25-second cooldown. For the first 4 seconds of that 10 seconds, whatever damage you take goes into a pool. No matter what damage you take, as long as you do not die, this pool continues to increase for that 4 seconds. Once that 4 seconds is taken or is done, then the next 6 seconds, whatever that damage is, turns into a hot and heals you back up. Okay, so example. Say I take 60,000 damage within the 4 seconds of me popping Temporal Shield. Now, after 4 seconds, that 60,000 damage will turn into a hot and heal me for 10k a second for 6 seconds because of 60,000 damage. That is pretty much how it is. It's pretty self-explanatory. The great thing about it as well is you can use it while you're stunned, feared, incapacitated, or asleep. And it is not on the GCD. So in PvE situations, this is going to be an amazing ability. I pretty much have it macroed into all of my spells, so I just do my rotation and done. It's over with. I don't have to pay attention to it or anything of the sort. You may even want to add an extra button if you really feel inclined to do so, just for those heavy raid AoE situations. So this will be my go-to spell for Temporal Shield for PvE. Now, like I said earlier, I am picking my PvP spec, so I'm going to click Ice Barrier. Now we get into Tier 3. Tier 3 is pure PvP. It does not matter what you pick for PvE. There's really nothing you can do with it. Maybe take Ring of Frost for ad control on a fight like Will of the Emperor. Now, Ring of Frost is the same as it used to be, to the point like it freezes targets that run into it for so many seconds. Now, here's the change. It is a cast time now. It is not an instant. But now that you have gained the cast time, they reduce the cooldown to where it's only 30 seconds. So you're doing a trade-off, less of a cooldown, more of a cast time. I would only choose this in a PvE situation for fights. If you have seen it in Mists of Pandaria, there's an encounter called Will of the Emperor where lots of ads go on during the boss encounter, and CC is a requirement. So I would use Ring of Frost. Next is Ice Ward. Ice Ward is pretty much kind of like a defensive ability, except you can cast it on any target that you choose. Basically, any target that you put Ice Ward on, if an enemy strikes that target, a Frost Nova effect goes out from them and freezes all enemies within 10 yards in place for 5 seconds. This ability lasts 30 seconds and it's on a 20-second cooldown. Honestly, I probably would only use this in an RBG situation, maybe an arena situation, but I could use it in an RBG situation for my tank flag carrier. Now, this is my go-to ability. It's called Frostjaw. This is my go-to ability for PvP. and it is a 1.5 second reduced by haste cast time, so mine is at 1.28 seconds. It is on a 20-second cooldown, and what it does is it silences and freezes a target for 8 seconds. In PvP, it's 4 seconds. Any target you cast it on. Now, I have a great combination for a ranged combo, shatter combo, with Frost Draw. I will explain that in a different video, but this is my go-to ability for PvP. Now we go to our fifth tier, or our fourth tier, sorry. Now our fourth tier has lots of arguments going on right now, and I'll explain what's going on with that. So first, I'm going to describe it Cold Snap. Cold Snap has changed to where now it only finishes the cooldown of Ice Block, Frost Nova, and Cone of Cold spells. So pretty much it only has one real good damaging ability and one good CC ability that it resets. Now it also instantly restores 30% of your HP. It sounds kind of good, but honestly it's really not. It's pretty much a Warlock Stone on crack. I'm not going to be choosing this at all unless they actually buff this. Just due to it's not going to reset my freeze on my pet if I'm Frost, and you know it'll only reset my Frost Nova. It's not going to reset my Ice Barrier either. Now, here's the two controversial abilities in PvE and PvP, and it's Cauterize and Greater Invisibility. I'll explain Greater Invisibility real quick, and then I'll go into Cauterize. Now, Greater Invisibility replaces your invisibility. It makes it to where it's like an instant invisibility from Prismatic Cloak when you had 3 points into that. Now, the extra additives to it is it removes 2 dots over time, or 2 dots, and it gives you a 90% damage reduction while you're invisible and 3 seconds after you come out of invisibility. So pretty much 3 to 23 seconds of damage reduction. There was a post earlier today that I commented on about how this was an overlooked talent for PvE. Here's my theory on this. They used threat drop mechanics and stuff like that. First off, threat drop mechanics are pretty much useless at this point in a boss encounter due to the new threat changes that they made back in Firelands, I believe it was. So honestly, unless you have a bad tank, there's really no point for threat drop. Not only to mention you can also blink away and use regular invisibility to threat drop. So that argument's nullified. 2 dots to remove. Well, honestly, there's really not that many boss encounters that apply dots to you as a DPS. So once again, kind of put out there to a useless argument. Now, the 3%, because you're not going to take any damage while you're invisible in a PvE situation unless you run into a lava wave or something. So it's only 3 seconds. Somebody said you can take up to 1.5 million damage with the 90% reduction and not die. That's cool. Cauterize, you can take any amount of damage and not die as long as you don't have the internal cooldown procced. So that is why, in my opinion, Cauterize for PvE is the best way to go. Cauterize basically is an attack which would otherwise kill you, instead brings you to 50% health, but then burns you for 40% of that health. Guess what, guys? It does not kill you anymore, which is amazing. You don't even need a hot anymore to survive as long as you don't take any extra damage after your Cauterize procs. Now, the difference is now it is on a 2-minute internal cooldown. 2-minute internal cooldown versus in Greater Invisibility that requires 2.5 minutes. So, once again, you can have more Cauterize procs theoretically than Greater Invisibility usage. So, Cauterize is my go-to ability for PvE, and because I am mostly a PvE player, even in my PvP spec, I tend to take Cauterize. However, Greater Invisibility isn't bad at all in a PvP situation. It's just very situational. So, you can choose either one of these for PvP, but honestly, especially during progression, Cauterize is the way to go for PvE. Let's get down into our 5th tier. Now, our 5th tier is the biggest controversial tier in the game right now is what bomb should I use, whether it be PvE or PvP situations. Here's the explanation. I'll give that to you in a second. Let's go over these spells real quick. Nether Tempest. Nether Tempest is the arcane version of Living Bomb, pretty much, except that you cannot spread it. Nether Tempest, you can put it on a target and you continuously put it on targets over and over again. It does 28,000 damage to that target for 12 seconds. That is, it's reduced by haste. So right now mine's 11.93. I'm not at the haste breakpoint. Now, every time it deals damage to its primary target that it's on, it does an additional 50% damage to an additional mob random within 10 yards of that target. Okay? So then you got Living Bomb. Living Bomb's the same, does 15,000 damage a tick, or 15,000 damage on that target that you placed it on, and it does a 12,000 damage explode on the target. Now, it has a limit of 3 targets, just like 4.3, but you can also spread it with a Inferno Blast or Fire Blast if you have it glyphed. Then you have Frost Bomb. Now, Frost Bomb is an interesting ability, and is also pretty good for PvP as well. It does 28,000 damage to the target that you put it on. It has a 10-second cooldown that is reduced by haste, and it has a 1.5 second cast time that is also reduced by haste. Not to mention that the countdown itself is reduced as well depending on your haste. So, 28,000 damage on the explosion of the target. And it'll do 14,000 damage to all targets within 10 yards. There's no limit on that. And it slows them for 70%. This is a great ability for PvP. You can slow down a whole entire group just with one Frost Bomb. Not to mention, it is good in PvE on single target and targets over 5 for PvE. Now, here's the controversial right now for single target damage by bombs. Right now, Living Bomb is the lowest for single target damage. Now, people are talking about Nether Tempest and Frost Bomb. Some say Frost Bomb is great for single target. Some say Nether Tempest is great. Both are great for single target. Here's my opinion. If you want to, and you're good enough, to 100% mid-max your damage with your bombs, in other words, never missing a second every time, say, Frost Bomb comes off cooldown, Frost Bomb is the way to go for single target because your haste reduces the cooldown on it. So you can end up having more bombs theoretically on the target versus Nether Tempest. With that being said, a more friendlier version for single target damage would be Nether Tempest. You don't have to worry about it so much because it lasts longer and it is not a cast time. So, this is very situational on the player, not on the mechanics, for a single target fight. When we get to 2 targets, Nether Tempest is the way to go, possibly Living Bomb. That is, once again, situational on how far the 2 targets are away. Say if you're only focusing the Drakes on War Master Blackhorn, Nether Tempest is the way to go. If you were only focusing, say, on the melee ads, Living Bomb is the way to go. It's just really dependent. The reason... Now, when we get to 3 targets, then you have Living Bomb that comes out on top due to it only taking 2 global cooldowns to spread to all 3 targets as long as they're in range. Once you get to 4 targets, then Nether Tempest comes back out on top, because technically if you wanted to, you could cast it more times. Once we get to 5 plus targets, for every target gained, a Frost Bomb starts to lead the pack. So, once again, these bombs are all situational. For my PvE, for single target, I'm going to go Frost Bomb if I can. If not, I am going to go Nether Tempest. For anything above 3 targets, or 2 targets, I'm going to go Living Bomb. And your Saj fight, say, for instance, I'm going to go back to Frost Bomb. Since I am PvPing in this spec right now, I'm going to go Frost Bomb because it is great for situational uses and getting that whole group slowed. So, Now we're going to get into the 6th tier. The 6th tier is once again a controversial tier. Not so much as the bomb situation, but it's getting there. We have 3 spells, all brand new, and here's the explanation of those. Invocation. Invocation passively, or reduces your evocation to 10 seconds. Now, not only that, but your passive regeneration on your mana is reduced by 50%, so you will need to evocate more. However, when you complete the evocation, it causes you to gain a 25% increased spell damage buff for 40 seconds. Now we're going to go Rune of Power. Rune of Power is a cast timed ability on a 6-second cooldown that lasts up to 1 minute. It allows you to place a Rune of Power on the ground that you can stand in. And when you stand in it, it gives you a 15% damage increase and a 100% mana regeneration. But you can only have 2 on the ground at the time. So, in my opinion, Rune of Power is the way to go for single target, non-movement fights like your patchwork style fights. This is my personal opinion, my personal preference. You can pretty much even out the Rune of Power so you're always standing in one. Then we've got Incanter's Ward. Incanter's Ward is an absorption ability. It absorbs set amount of damage for 8 seconds. Once the damage is absorbed, it can restore up to 18% of your maximum mana. Once this effect ends, you gain 30% increased spell power damage for 15 seconds based on the absorption used. This is on an instant cast and on a 25-second cooldown. Now here's the extra thing. It passively increases spell damage by 6% and passively increases mana regeneration by 65%. This effect, however, is deactivated when your Incanter's Ward is on cooldown, so keep that in mind, guys. Here's my theory on this. Rune of Power is great for single target, very minimal movement fights to 0 movement fights, especially if you can micromanage. Invocation, in my opinion, is for, once again, you've got to time it correctly. These two, in my opinion, come out hand in hand. More people choose Invocation because they say they can get it off better, and they're more prone to using Evocation. My problem with the Invocation ability is if you cancel it, even if it is 0.2 seconds, if you clip it 0.2 seconds, you get 0 damage buff. 0. So it can end up being more detrimental. In my opinion, Rune of Power will be more forgiving than Invocation. Now, Incanter's Ward is great for heavy movement fights and for those fights that do a lot of AoE raid damage. It's definitely the way to go because you're guaranteed to break that. You're guaranteed to get the 18% maximum mana. You're guaranteed to get the full damage buff. Alright guys, that is pretty much the whole talent system. Quick recap on what I would choose for PvP, and then I'll show you what I would choose for PvE. For Tier 1, I would choose Scorch for PvP. Tier 2, Ice Barrier. Tier 3, Frostjaw. Tier 4, Cauterize. Or a Greater Invisibility, depending on which one you want to use. My opinion is Cauterize. Tier 5, Frostbomb. Or, once again, you can choose Living Bomb if you want. And then for Tier 6, I would use, for PvP, Incanter's Ward. Now, for PvE situations, let's go with a patchwork style fight. I would choose Presence of Mind, Temporal Shield. It doesn't matter here, so Frostjaw, Cauterize, and Frostbomb. For minimal movement fights and fights that are, say, 2 targets, I would choose Ice Flows, Temporal Shield again. Once again, Tier 3 doesn't matter. Tier 4, Cauterize. Tier 5, Nether Tempest or Living Bomb. 3 targets, minimal movement. I will use Ice Flows, Temporal Shield, doesn't matter in Tier 3. Tier 4, Cauterize, and Living Bomb. 4 targets, we'll go with the same, except we'll choose Nether Tempest. 5 targets, Nether Tempest or Frost Bomb. And if I were to be on a heavy movement fight, whether I be any Spec Fire Frost or Arcane, I would choose Scorch, Temporal Shield, doesn't matter Tier 3, Cauterize, and your choice of a bomb, depending on how many targets there are. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Part 2 is coming out soon. We're going to be talking about all the glyph changes, and then Part 3 I will be talking about reforging and rotations. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Catch you out there on the battlefield, and I'll catch you in my stream on Twitch TV. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good night.